Alright, what's up everybody? So here we are, 10 videos. We're back. Things are coming along good. I'm going to cover a lot just like I always do. If you've stuck around this long, I really appreciate you guys. This thing is, it's really coming together nice. So let's get to it. There's a lot of progress made in this one. Well, I think I'm actually at that point where I'm ready to start covering up all the windows and, you know, block this first layer of primer, do some touch-up body work, and get ready for paint. I can't believe I feel like I'm at this point now. And it's all about how you feel. Like, if you've built cars before, you kind of know if you're not ready for something. But man, like, I actually feel like I'm there. It's just, I've done so much to try and make sure that once this thing is painted, I don't have a whole lot left to do except put things together and, you know, the finishing things. It's crazy. Now, I spend a lot of time taping the way that I do, and also it all depends on what you're doing. If you're trying to prime certain spots versus if you're priming a whole piece like the big body shell, there's always some precise way that you can tape and get exactly what you're going for. In this case, you can see I'm kind of taping up, you know, from behind the drip edge because I wanted to put a lot of primer on that drip edge, but I just had to tape it from, you know, basically back taping it. So that's what we're doing here, and, you know, just trying to get this thing ready. It's a lot of work, and be ready to spend a few hours each time you tape up the car. I mean, you want to, you know, do it nice so the stuff isn't blowing off whenever you're trying to spray and whatnot. What you see me doing here is I'm taping up the main body shell of the car because I know ultimately I'm going to end up priming that by itself. But what I wanted to do was at least cover up the big openings like the door openings and the windshield, because before I pull the doors and front clip off, this is where I'm going to finish out all the main body work, you know, all the major stuff where the gaps need to be right and everything wants to line up. I just wanted to cut down on the amount of dust that I had inside the car. So basically, no matter what I do here between the body work and all that, it, you know, hopefully was going to stop at the paper and I can just blow it away. So that's what you're seeing here. It's kind of the beginning of a long phase where I was planning to do the body work, then I'm going to spot prime, then I'm going to pull the other parts off and just do the overall final prime on the body. So I had this all kind of worked out. There was definitely a method to the madness, but it looks like it gets kind of crazy for a while, especially when I tape up for spot primer, because it just seems like there's paper and tape everywhere, and probably would have been easier to cover the car with plastic and cut out holes, but it was fine. I was already in the process and just kind of rolling with it. Yeah, this is like one of those things that can make a car great or okay. And I mean, it's like blocking the door edge with the quarter panel, you know. Now, I pretty much got this the way I want it. This one is okay. I'm gonna smooth it out a little more, get some of those scratches out maybe. But of course you gotta go back and touch up. See, like that's gonna be a little low. So I'm gonna scuff in there and I'm gonna throw a little more filler up here, where you don't want to just sand this down because then you're gonna have a wave in there. So, you know, we're blocking the door to the quarter panel. I've got those two sections good. You gotta make your own little blocks. Even a round one is good for this, but I'm kind of cutting away at it, working into the curve, you know, just little by little. So, and kind of with that edge, but there's all kinds of ways to do it. And I might grab the round block and just kind of run it in there a little too. But it'll get there. I know I've kind of said it before, but you know, just this is where I really got to where I felt more comfortable working on this thing. I mean, building a car I've never built before or even been around. I mean, I've learned the feel of this car and, you know, the way it looks just from having the parts. And of course, you know, Google, looking at other pictures of built Vaydors, but you don't really learn the look of the car and all the curves and lines until you just start messing with it. And it just felt so good to finally be to this point. I mean, I'm familiar with paint and body work, so this just really started to feel like everything was going smoother. You know, there's still some unknowns and some hurdles I'm gonna have to get over with the interior and things I need to figure out, but I feel like I'm pretty much smooth sailing, at least with the paint and body process now, so this is great. Alright, what I've got going on now is I'm actually leveling the door to the quarter panel. Now, cutting the gap is going to be the first thing that you want to do, but I already did that, and I just got finished doing the body work to where all these sections are going to line up really, really nice when the door is closed. Now, this is extremely important. This is a big note. If you're doing this step, you need to have that gas strut spring hooked up. All right. I leave it unhooked most of the time. I mean, the whole almost 2 years I've been working on this car, I've never left those gas struts connected with the doors closed overnight, because I want those things to last, you know, so that's basically giving me an extra probably year or two of life on those things. So I don't like them staying compressed when the doors are shut. So I just basically make it easy to, you know, you raise the door, undo the little nut and pull the thing out, and when I'm done for the day, I'll just close the doors with them, you know, not being connected to those springs. So basically, I have to lift them up. But you want those things connected, because if they're not, it changes the way this whole door sets. So when you're doing the leveling, you have to connect those gas struts. And I even tested it, you know, when the door was closed and the gas strut wasn't connected, it was just kind of hanging in there. This whole section was different. I want to say, you know, the door, it kinks a little bit different because of the way that it's, you know, on the latch, so that gas strut's putting pressure on it. I want to say that when it wasn't connected, it was in up here and out down here a little bit, and that would make sense because it's pushing on it, you know, so that's a really big one. Now the other thing I'm doing is I'm putting this trim piece on just temporarily, because I wanted to make sure that I can open and close the door without it rubbing. Now it's rubbing right here, and I'm having a little bit of an issue getting this right. I think I'm going to end up having to cut some of this down, even though it does open right now. I just don't like that we're flush down here, and up here it's actually sticking out about 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little bit less. So I'm thinking I'm just gonna kind of shave this down. Maybe I won't have as much of this point here, but somehow I'm gonna get that to go in. But my main goal right now is just getting it to where the door will actually open and close, so that I can start painting stuff. And then when I get ready to fine fit this, I'll do that, you know, kind of in the end. But that's where I'm at right now. I just got the door to open up and it passes this okay. It's just really close. So I'm gonna try and, you know, do it better before the car's actually finished. So that's what's going on right now. Also leveled this section. It took quite a bit because the way that this is bolting up, this whole front end, especially down there, is really tricky, and I don't know if there's any way to really get that right without doing a whole bunch of extra work, like cutting that rocker panel or unbonding it and rebonding it, you know, a little closer. I mean, there was a lot that was gonna have to be cut out if that was gonna be in, and I've seen a lot of Vaydors that have this little issue here. So I've kind of decided, you know what, whatever's going on down here in this corner, that's gonna kind of be where all the problems just come together, and they can just hang out. You know, as long as it looks okay up here, and I get this little trim piece pretty good, and that looks great back here. This is really what I want to look good. I feel like down there, you know what, it just, the problems can just, that's where they'll all just kind of meet up, and that's what happens. So yeah, so we're gonna keep on going with this. Pretty much done with the passenger side, and I gotta do the same thing now to the driver's side, and then I'm basically pulling the doors and the front clip off so we can do the final 2K primer and get ready to paint the body. Now another thing that had to be done, and this isn't complete yet, but I added about a 1/4 inch of flux right there, and you can see it. So this was way too far gapped. But see, down here, it was pretty good. So I'm kind of like, it's just, there was some inconsistency. And I said, all right, we'll keep this pretty much the same. Straighten it out a little bit. It didn't need too much, but you try to get this gap as good as you can, as straight as you can. You know, that's gonna be fine. I'm okay with that. And then, of course, there will be a little bit more fine tuning when I'm actually painting the door, you know, getting the rocker cleaned up. Like, there's still some cleanup to do. But this was the big one right here. I mean, that, I literally added a 1/4 inch thick of flux into there. I had to sand that whole flat surface real good so that, you know, I could just smear a big layer of it. And now this is all lining up pretty good, you know. And the gap's going to have to be a little bit big just because of the way these doors open, but I'm okay with it. So that was the other part, but we're pretty much getting ready to move on to the other side. And see, I gotta clean this up. This is where you can see I had to resin flux those studs that I use into there, and I just need to clean up the line and make it look nice. But yeah, it's coming along. Hopefully we'll see some paint soon. Okay, what I mean by catch up here is, you know, I've just done all these other things and realized the hood needs to be literally caught up to the rest of the body. If I'm going to do the body work, I need to get the hood covered with that first coat of slick sand polyester primer so the gel coat's covered and we don't have to worry about Bondo and things not sticking to that gel coat. So that's all we're doing here. Okay, I got the first round of primer on the hood. Now this is the slick sand, the one that's meant to cover the gel coat. So that way, you know, you don't paint on this. This is the one that just basically, you cover the gel coat and then you kind of do your body work and get things fine-tuned and all that. But one thing I'm really happy about is this. If you watched the part of whichever video it was, I want to say part 8 where I did the hood latch, man, this, I wish they came like this, but of course all cars are going to be different. If you go through all the trouble that it takes to, you know, get the hole cut and mount this in the car and close the hood on it, you know, get this piece resined in here this way, I mean, this is so worth it. It came out so cool. You know, it's a little bit raised back here, so it kind of fits the angle right. But man, this thing, I mean, it literally sits right on there and it only goes in one place. I mean, it is the tightest, coolest fit ever. And of course, there's still, like, I gotta clean this up a little bit. The rest of the primer and some sanding and stuff is gonna make this, you know, a lot nicer here. Maybe fix that little corner or whatever, that edge there. But I mean, the way this fits on is just amazing, and I love the way that sits. It's just so cool. So stuff like that, you know, it's a lot of tedious work, but it's so cool when it's done. It's so worth it. So we're gonna get this thing mounted on the car and see if we can figure out what body work needs to be done to level the nose properly. Because really the sides, I'm not gonna do much. There's such a small line before the body changes on the car. So it's mainly gonna be up here in the front area that I'm gonna be worried about the leveling a little bit. So we'll get that going next. I could say the hood leveling to the nose seemed to go pretty smooth. It didn't really give me a lot of trouble. And, you know, this is just a prime example. If you look at some of these still shots where the car's just sitting there, I mean, the lines are looking pretty good. I'm not being a 100% stickler about how perfect the lines and the gaps are on this car. I mean, I'm doing it to a point where I'm going to feel comfortable driving the car and enjoying it. But I'm not building a Trailer Queen show car here. I mean, any hot rodder guy could look at it and be like, oh, you know, you could have got that a little bit better or whatever, but Either way, to build this car, you need to spend some time on this stuff, even to get it to a 90 or 95%. This body is not just gonna pop on. I mean, I know they call it a kit, but I'm just being completely honest here. Like, no one should be trying to throw the Vaydor together quick and just think you're ready for a paint and body. I mean, it's just not like that. There's so much more to it. And nobody will really know what goes into building this car until you actually do it. It's definitely, it's another level of concentration and tediousy that you're gonna really experience if you do it this way. Okay, so here's where I'm at right now. The main body work at all the areas that meet, like the doors and the quarters, doors and fender, or whatever you want to call it, front clip, all that good stuff. Also, don't forget the hood, where it meets the front. That nose was kind of bad. You can tell in the body work. The primer is going to help, but it feels good, but it's just you can kind of see the way that spot shows through. That area was bad, and then there were some lows and highs between the hood and stuff, so I did that. But what you got to do right now is basically I'm doing all the body work that matters when the car is together. Like when you close the doors, you want, you know, the seam to look good right here. Okay, so that's all flat. I got this all nice and flat together. And remember, you need the strut springs attached. If you've been leaving them undone so that they save, you know, they keep some life, I've been leaving mine unattached for the whole build, so they're still practically brand new. But you need to attach them and close the door whenever you're doing this. And I know I've already kind of explained that in another video. It's very important because the door is going to sit at a completely different kink compared to when that strut's attached and when it's not. So what I'm basically doing right now is I'm getting ready to spot prime all the areas where I did either fiberglass work or where I did big body work. You know, I'm probably going to throw some primer over these again because the polyester slick sand primer is what was on here first. And what I want to do is cover all these spot areas with slick sand before I go on to the 2K primer. Now I'm going to be using PPG K38. I want to say if you go buy the gallon and the hardener, it's somewhere around 600 bucks, but it's amazing and very good quality stuff. You don't have to worry about, you know, giving you trouble. So I basically just want to continue the slick sand to where all these bodywork areas are covered. Now I want to show you a technique that I learned at a body shop I worked at when I was, you know, just fresh out of high school. It's kind of the first job I ever had. And, well, the first, like, full-time normal job that I had. What we used to do is if we had to put primer here and here, we would find all the outward or convex, not concave areas. So all the outward edges like this, where you can draw a tape line, you're going to use those to your advantage. So I'm going to run my tape from here, around here. All right. Now this little area, you can kind of jump over that because that's not a big deal. You could sand a line, and I'm not even going to prime heavily that far. I'm going to pretty much fade the primer off of here, you know. But what I'm going to do is run my tape line up here and down there. So you can see I've sanded the areas that look lighter and darker. I didn't sand that. But I've sanded everywhere that's inside where I'm going to run my tape. So I know I'm not going to get a lot of overspray back here. So this is okay, you know, to have a tape line. So we're going to come around, I'm going to go in here, and then I'm going to run my hard tape edge all the way up to here. Follow that. And then over here, I'm probably just going to put a tape line and fold the tape back so it's got a little bit of a soft edge. Either way, I'm not going to be overspraying that far. But what's really cool about doing it this way, I swear that loud truck goes by every night. What's really cool about doing it this way is that anywhere you tape here, if you create a hard primer line, it's real easy to cut the edge with some sandpaper because it's on that positive corner, you know.
If you did it on a flat spot, let's just say that I cut a tape line here and here, and I had primer really close to it, it's real difficult to get rid of that line. And on top of that, I'm going to be honest, out of all the years of doing paint and body work I've done, if you create a hard tape line on any flat surface, it's almost like no matter how hard you sand it out, you pretty much never get rid of it. I mean, I've blocked those lines out before when somebody did it, even re-primed it, and I swear when you put color and clear coat on the car, you still see a little bit of that line left over. And I've always kind of wondered why. I think it's got something to do with when you do a hard tape line, or anytime you put new material on an old material, the solvents actually cause the old material to swell a little tiny bit. And I think that even if you sand those lines out, you're never really getting rid of that swell. So it's really important. Don't make hard tape lines that are going to be hard to sand out, unless it's just going to be a little overspray that goes up to it. Now, same thing down here, but this is going to be a little trickier. Now, I'm going to probably make a line over here, but I'm just going to fan the overspray of the primer out. I'm going to tape up this whole door handle cavity. I'm going to cover this because I don't want any primer in here at all. I don't need it in there. This has already been, I'll do 2K primer, but I don't need more slick sand primer in here. So I'm going to cover that up. I'm going to go right against that positive edge. Pretty much all these surfaces, I'm just going to have to fan a little, and I'm going to put the paper maybe over here, just where I know that I have enough room to fan out and not create a hard line. Same thing over here. We can fan out a little bit. Now, as far as this one goes, I'm probably going to tape up this area because I don't need any primer here. And of course, there's a hard line here, so I can cover all this. And if that all makes sense, you know, it's just kind of sew on. You see what I'm getting at. Now, over here, I could probably put a hard tape line in here because I'm going to fan this, and I'm not going to have thick overspray all the way that far. And, you know, same here. I can put a tape line there. It's not that bad to have to cut a line in that kind of negative space, but you just don't want to hammer into it with a lot because it will create a line that's hard to get rid of sometimes. So that's basically something I kind of wanted to share with you guys. If you never worked at a body shop that did things that way, it's kind of cool. I think it works out great, but you know, you're basically taking advantage of any outward edges that you can to create like a stopping point for that primer, because you know it's easy to sand that hard line off when it rolls around. All right, cool. Here we go. Let's keep it going.
I gotta say, I had some pretty nice nights to do this. You know, it was the beginning of summer. Here in Texas, of course, it's hot. I mean, it's just probably May-ish kind of time frame. 2024, that way when I look back on this video, I'll remember. But I'm not exactly sure that's what month it was, but we're somewhere around there. And, you know, it's so nice. It's peaceful working out here. And for the most part, I keep the mosquitoes down in my area pretty good. That's a whole nother video that I could make, but I've got a technique where I basically just destroy their breeding cycle, and it's kind of cool. But it works out. I don't really get messed with too much, you know, one here and there. Keep lots of lights on. It's just, this was just the kind of stuff I love about building a car and having a project like this. You just spend countless hours on your own just letting your mind run wild, you know, and sometimes you're not even thinking about the car, because if you've done it enough, you kind of know what you're doing, you know, you're thinking about brainstorming about other projects, or just who knows what. It's a good time.
All right, another day. Well, most of the body work went awesome yesterday, and pretty much today I'm gonna try and get primer on all those spots, polyester primer, and after that pull the front clip and the doors off so that I can start working on filler primer just for the main body. So that should be cool. Now I'm cooking today also, so that for the next few days I can have food and not have to worry about going somewhere to eat. Making my grandma's split pea soup recipe and some chili. Heck yeah.
Okay, moving right along. I'm adding some tape and paper so that I can get all my new Bondo spots covered. And this is really gonna complete this phase out really nice. You know, I'm gonna get to kind of see how my lines look and see how everything is leveled out. But I think this is a good idea. It's gonna work out really good because when I take these parts off, it's also gonna protect this body filler from getting any grease and stuff like that. It's easier to sand it off the primer than to, you know, have it dirty and have to feel like I gotta sand a little bit of it off, and then it's, you know, just gonna bug me thinking it's screwing it up. So it's coming out good. So this was a really long night. I mean, I pulled an all-nighter and I ended up spraying the primer probably in the morning after the sun came up. I mean, I was taping, and you know, it was a lot of taping because I had a lot of spots. And the whole objective here was that I wanted to spot prime all these main bodywork areas, and I wanted to cover them up with the slick sand primer because that stuff is so thick and so, you know, it's hard. And it allows you to sand really, really good, you know, especially if you're putting it over bodywork. It gives you a lot of, let's say, forgiveness for, you know, your bodywork kind of being not perfect. So typically I know that when I do a bunch of primer spots, I'm going to end up priming the whole thing, and then I'm going to end up doing all the blocking and trying to make sure, you know, it's a little more perfect. And then I end up shooting a whole new round of primer on it because I've got so many places where it might have cut through a little bit or whatever. Well, this time I decided to do these spots while the whole car was together because it's going to do a few things for me. A, it was going to seal up all the body work that I had done on the front clip, the hood, and the doors while I have those taken apart. So if I touch them and move them around, I'm not going to be, you know, getting that Bondo all dirty and doing stuff like that. So that was one main reason. And then the other reason was that even when I get to the body, I can block sand that new layer of slick sand primer, and I'm going to have 95% of the leveling done, so that when I shoot my final round of K38 primer, which is made by PPG, I'll show you guys a little bit more here in a minute, but the final K38 primer that we're going to use on the, you know, as the paintable layer, that's going to go on a lot better, and it means I'm also not going to be trying to block so many imperfections out of that. I'd rather have that K38 go on, you know, especially hitting over, you know, $500 a gallon for the primer and the hardener. I would rather have that stuff go on with the surface as ready as possible. So I used up more of the slick sand to basically finish off my body work, and now the next step is going to be to kind of block the whole body so that we prep it for that K38.
So I'm basically looking at how nice the door lines up now with the quarter panel versus before, you know. My gosh, the way the kit comes, I mean, there's going to be some high and low, you know, but man, I mean, the bodywork isn't going to be perfect yet. It's, you know, I still got to prime and block the whole car and the other parts, but just the fact that now I've got even the front clip with the door, man, it just looks amazing. It lines up so straight, and that wasn't the case before. My gaps are good. So yeah, I'm really happy with that. The drip edge came out good. I almost could have stood to put a coat of body filler in it or something, but you know, certain areas are just kind of rocky inside, but it's okay, you're never really gonna see that. And then here's this side, man, lines, there's a little shadow on here, it's throwing it off. Man, it lines up good. My gosh, I just hope when I put it back together, it all lines up that way. I'm sure it will, but pretty happy with it. Oh, and then I did a little bit on the hood, because the hood had some high and low versus the nose piece. Also, the nose piece itself had some bad, like a low spot over on the far right side. So now it's like, whew, man, look at the reflection. It's like pretty straight. Oh, how'd my line come out? I couldn't tell. Okay, the line's a little crooked. I'm gonna have to fix that when I do the prime and block.
And once the primer's all cured, I just remove that tape and paper. Now you're gonna see me messing with the door strut a little bit here, and that's what I was talking about, where when I'm doing the body work or even the priming, I wanted that thing connected because I wanted the door to have the pressure on it, like the upward force that it's gonna have when the car is finished and that strut is always attached. So even the priming, I wanted to spray it with the door level the way that it was supposed to be. And then once I was done with that, I went ahead and detached that strut. So once again, I'm kind of saving the life of it, and it's not always just sitting there compressed while the door's closed.
All right, I got a lot of the body work done. It's time to take it apart for some paint.
Now, getting to this point was a really cool feeling because I knew that when I felt comfortable that it was time to take the front clip and the doors off and just focus on the main body, itself. I knew that I could handle that a lot easier. It's just when the whole car is put together, you're going all over it, you're trying to keep up with what you're doing, what you haven't done, what to do next. I mean, it's a lot, and I was just really ready to have all those lines and gaps kind of settled the way I needed them and get to this point where we could just get down to the main body and really focus on it. Now, just because I got to it didn't mean that it was completely ready. We're gonna end up bonding part of the back that never got done. There's still some loose ends that have to be finished up, so we're gonna keep working it. But at least now, before we know it, we're gonna be shooting guide coat all over this whole thing and doing a good block sand and prime and re-block sand and prep, hopefully some paint soon.
Alright, now I knew there was one space, they said, in the rear of the car that you need to bond. And, I didn't completely understand why, but now I'm doing it because even though the back is pretty secure with the wheel wells, if you come over here and you I've got hiccups, sorry. You kind of hit this in some ways. It's hard to tell from the camera, but this area flutters a lot. And what I came to realize is all this little extra movement here, when I kind of pull up and down, it moves that. And if you look underneath, you'll see it moves against the cage a little bit, like it's, it could definitely use some stiffening up. So here's the simple solution, okay? I've welded a bracket to the cage up here, all right? Now, it's not the prettiest thing, but I prepped all this fiberglass around here first, because what I'm doing is I welded a bracket, I threaded it with a 1/4-20 for a 1/4-20 bolt, and then, since all this is prepped, after I put the bolt through it, I'm going to flux all this. I'm going to mix up some resin putty and smear it all over here, and then I'm going to put a few sheets of fiberglass cloth over it. Now, what that's going to do is that's going to hold this whole section real nice and tight to that welded bracket. And I mean, it's a permanent bond anyway, so it's not ever going to have to be undone. But what I'm doing is I threaded the hole, and I'm going to use one of these aircraft countersunk washers so that basically the screw is going to go through, and you know, you can countersink the fiberglass a little bit because it's nice and thick here. It looks like the fiberglass is a good 1/4 inch thick, and I'm just going to go into it a little bit just so this isn't completely protruding, you know, way out. But I'm going to put the bolt in. That way it holds it in place temporarily while I'm still working on the car, you know, if I'm like leaning on it or whatever like that. So it's going to hold it in place temporarily, but while it's holding it, I'm going to put some, you know, resin putty and do all the glass work back there so that once it cures, this is going to be nice and stiff. And I'm doing that to both sides. So that's how you bond the back right at the cage. And I think it's going to work pretty good. Now I wanted to show you, basically when I'm doing a bond like this, I like to fill in the flocks anywhere that it's uneven and basically kind of make a mound to where if the fiberglass cloth is going to go over this metal bracket and it's going to come over here to where it's flat, you know, a little bit on the surface, you want to make sure that there's not like an air void. I like to, you know, stuff this flocks all up underneath the bracket so it's a real good solid bond, and then smooth it out, you know, kind of make it like a Bondo wipe in a way, where you've got like a little bit of a hill to work with. Now it doesn't have to be perfectly smooth, because the second you lay that mat on here, that fiberglass cloth, it's gonna, you know, you can use your fingers or whatever just to kind of get this to lay the way that you want it. So it doesn't have to be perfect. All these little things here can get pushed down, but basically this is just kind of what I do to fill in the voids and make that cloth go on a lot better. Now the next part of this is I've cut out some, well, one square. I'm going to try this. I did a strip so that I can just make squares out of that same size if it works, or I can adjust it from there. But I cut one of them. What I'm going to do is lay this in there. I'm thinking this will work good to go, and as a matter of fact it actually won't. It probably needs to be a little bit more of a rectangle, or the hole needs to be more on one side because there's the bracket and it's not going to go over that part. It's just going to go over on 3 sides of the bracket. So if anything, I probably need to put this hole closer to one edge or cut a little bit of this side off. But anyway, I'm going to see how this one lays on, and then I'm going to know how to adjust the rest of my pieces. I'm thinking I'm going to do 4 to 5 layers of glass on each side just to build some good strength, and then that's going to be good. All right, I'm doing the driver's side first. Okay, well, you know, this one's longer. I guess I could have let this one stay a bit longer. Anyway, I think, okay, this is gonna be quite large. So let me round these corners off and adjust it a little bit. Okay, now sometimes it takes a little bit to get your sizing right, but I think if I put this here, let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna flip it over. I'm gonna put the larger side up on top because I feel like it needs more up there, maybe. Well, it's a little tricky. Let's see what happens. Maybe I can put it over a little. I don't know. This could almost be like the last piece, because I feel like your first pieces should be smaller. Okay. So I'm almost there. Getting to where I think if I lay these ends down, it's going to be about what I want, except it's still a bit long up here. And I don't like putting new cloth over anything that I haven't prepped. So my prep area isn't that large. I'm going to make these a little smaller. Okay, I've pretty much got what I'm going for on this. Now you can see I've pushed it into where the flocks is. Now you don't want to push it hard because you want it to have that kind of straightness, you know, gives you a more, I don't know, maybe more strength to keep it, you know, thicker there. But I'm going to cut a few more pieces like this, and then the pieces will get gradually larger to cover my prep area. That way it kind of fans out. But that's pretty much what I'm going for. So I'm going to mix up some liquid resin now and start painting it into this this cloth as we go through the layers.
Okay, so I finally got to that point where I felt like the body was ready to start blocking down that coat of slick sand. Now, this was a long process because I wanted to really take that stuff down quite a bit and, you know, see if I could get out some of the surface issues that were going on. You know, there's always going to be something, but I will say the Vaydor kit is pretty straight. You know, when it comes to the main body, there's not a whole lot of blocking you have to do to get out waves or anything like that. They've done a pretty good job, at least, you know, so far for the roof, the trunk, and all the areas that you see on the exterior of the car. You know, they're pretty good. So there's very minor things that I was kind of working on here. Now, this was a really long process just because that first layer of primer is just going to be that way. I mean, if you piled on a good 3, you know, heavy coats of that slick sand, you're going to have a lot that you can take down, and you're going to see, you know, some things that you definitely want to work with. Now, I had very minimal areas that I had to use body filler on, but I did those, you know, knowing that my next coat with the K38 PPG primer was going to take care of it really easily. So that's kind of what's going on here, just going through the process of really blocking, and you know, this is where I really went over the whole body with kind of a fine-tooth comb to really see what I was up against as far as what the next coat of primer needed to cover and, you know, what it was really going to take to get this thing paint ready.
Alright, we're getting ready to mix some K38. This is the 2K primer that's going on the Vaydor. There it is. Looking about $600 for the gallon and the quart of hardener. Man. But it's good stuff. It's great. I mean, I've used this stuff for years. I haven't used it in a long time, but years ago I used a lot of it, and it's a great primer. And it actually is meant to stick to even the bare gel coat if there's some cut through. So there's the Vaydor ready to go, and you know, for the most part it's got slick sand, the polyester primer on it, but anywhere that might have cut through to the gel coat, I've got some small spots where the white gel coat's showing, so this will still go over that just fine. This is some very versatile stuff, meant to go over, you know, aluminum and metal and all kinds of different material. Cool. It's very thick too. Not as thick as the slick sand, but it's some pretty good thick stuff.
Now I remember I started out with my normal primer gun, which I don't know if it's like a 1.5 or 1.6 tip or something, but you know, for the most part it works good on smaller things, but for this whole body I really needed that thing to lay some material out. And I ended up grabbing the gun that I was using for the slick sand primer, the 2.5 tip, and that did a lot better for me. It just, you know, of course it's better, I think, to have it too fast than not fast enough when you're sitting there laying on the trigger and you're just not getting what you need. So it was really nice to really mix the primer and lay it on there quick so it would all gloss out kind of nice together, and then I could just be ready for the next coat a little quicker. So you can still use a pretty large tip with the K38. Now, it was definitely cool to finally get to this stage. I actually had my neighbor, she said she'd help me sand the car, so that was kind of cool. It got it done a lot quicker. I think I had spent about 15 hours doing it by myself when I was doing the slick sand, and I just was like, man, I'd really like to get it done a little quicker. So between the two of us, we knocked a lot of it out in, you know, about 4 hours, and then I was able to kind of finish off the small areas that she wasn't comfortable with. But you know, it was cool to kind of teach someone else how to, you know, block, and she did a really good job, so that's pretty cool. Maybe I'll get her to help me out in the future.
All right, Marisa, how was your first day sanding?
It was great. Better have big muscles tomorrow.
Really? Good job. It's fun. So here I'm kind of finishing up the blocking. Now this is the final round of primer. And when you're doing the big flat areas, I found that a good kind of, this is about almost a 1/2 inch thick, and it's a flexible kind of rubber foam. And this came from some packaging material a friend of mine had one time. Now you can buy blocks like this from, you know, Durablock or whatever, but this stuff has been awesome. It's actually kind of firm. It's like, you can kind of hear it. You know, it's been great. And I'm wondering if I can give you like a, let's see, fling it. See, it's like, it's flexible, but still rigid enough to where it makes a really good block for these Vaydor surfaces. Now what I've been doing is using, you know, some 320, and it's this blue 3M stuff that you can even get from Walmart. This stuff stays sharp for a long time. Love this blue sandpaper. But I've been working up to the lines and even, you know, pretty close to this, you know, little corner and things like that here. This has been a really good sanding combo for this. And, you know, of course, do all your flat areas, leave your edges to the very last. I mean, I'm doing as much, but I love how the Vaydor has all these almost like gem looking, you know, or crystal looking like parts that kind of come together. And it makes it real easy to focus on all these sections kind of individually. You block that, then you block this section, you know, then you block that one and that, you know, it's really cool. But this is going great so far. This is the K38 PPG primer, and you know, even though I'm getting it at $420 a gallon with the hardener, it could be up to $6, you know, at certain shops. So it's great stuff. I love this. I mean, it's blocking out. It's smooth as you could ever imagine when it's prepped, and probably some 400 or 600 grit after this. I'll wet sand it and get it ready. But man, it's coming out great. I'm just looking forward to getting this thing sprayed soon. And I'm going to tell you guys about this K38 primer. It is so strong. This has been a week and I still can't scratch it off my thumbnail. Other primers and stuff, I mean, they come off. I know it looks nasty, but I've been working a lot. Lots of sanding on the Vaydor. But yeah, that stuff is durable. I've tried it with my other hand, but I'm holding the phone right now, and I can't scratch it off with my other thumb. So, good stuff.
Alright, this task was a long time coming, and you know, I had really used the booth for probably 10 or 11 years. It's been great, but I've noticed, you know, light bulbs here and there that are kind of going out. It was the ballast in my fluorescent fixtures, and instead of replacing these ballasts, I just decided to do LED upgrade, and I said, you know what, it's really time, especially before painting this Vaydor body and doing more of the parts of the car. It would be nice to have the lighting updated, make it a little brighter. Let's get the walls repainted and, you know, just kind of overall clean this thing out and give it a nice reset. So that's what we're doing here, and it took a few days, but it was worth it to stop and go through all this and just kind of make everything a little bit better. And I definitely need it once I start spraying more, and, you know, it helped out getting the Vaydor body painted for sure.
This thing is so bright. It's nighttime now, so Jesus Christ. Okay, it's hard to tell from the camera, but geez, these lights in the center, I did all LEDs. I had to rewire the light fixture to bypass the ballasts. So they're all LEDs up here in the center, but yeah, the camera you can't really tell, but you can see an obvious difference in person, how bright those middle four are. And then I added the two on the sides and figured if I ever really want those that way, I could just move them. But at least now I've got light on both sides kind of evenly. I've always had those there, but yeah, so this thing is gonna be cool. I'll have to do a little bit of paint, getting the booth ready to put the Vaydor in there and do a paint job on it. But I wanted to update the booth a little bit and make it nicer. It's so bright in there. Like, this one fixture is pretty bright by itself, but that freaking paint booth, oh my gosh. Look at the difference. It's like daylight in that thing. Crap. Alright, it's final prep day, which basically means I've got everything off the car. I took the Lambo hinges off as well. And it's time to touch up any sanding that I might have missed, you know, any small divots that need to be spot repaired, and then we're going to do the final wet sanding, get it all taped up, and back in the booth to paint.
Now, wet sanding is another good example of when you might tape things up a little different. And in this step, I was using plastic drop cloth to go around and cover up all the openings. Now, I still had to be careful around the trunk because I didn't want the water to build up in that area that's basically like a pool. You know, once you tape that hole up, it makes pretty much like a little pool back there. So, luckily I had built the drip edge with the drain tubes, and that took care of a lot of it. But there was still some water that could build up, so you kind of be careful. Otherwise, you know, this is a very helpful method, and you can do this on a lot of different cars. Anytime you're going to wet sand, you know, it just helps keep things from getting wet inside, and you know, it's easy to work with too. So the story with my colors is basically, I've always liked the bright lime greens, and now they have these, you know, nice metallics and all that you can get. Well, this color started out as Synergy Green, and at some point I added some of the fresh lime metallic to it. So both Chevrolet colors. I really don't know if I've achieved what I wanted out of a lime green if I was going to use it. And I also started seeing these new teal colors. Well, no, they've used them before, but they're just getting better. There's a Jeep color that I thought is really, really nice, and it's that, you know, just kind of a teal metallic bluish green or sea kind of color. And I happened to come across this can on accident, even though you need to know that base coat right now for a nice lime green metallic, or some of these, you know, blues and probably the reds are more expensive. I've been quoted up to $1,600 for a gallon of the Ultra 7000 Sherwin-Williams. And that's the only paint line that I really like to use, especially if I'm painting something nice like the Vaydor. There's no cheap materials here. Like I said before, primers are, you know, my primers are $400 and $500 for the gallon kit, and same thing here. Also very expensive clear. I'm not putting anything cheap on this car because it's just not worth it. It doesn't last longer than about 2 years. So I went to a paint supply store and I came across this gorgeous metallic color that they had on clearance, priced down from what would have normally been $1,300 to $289. And I said I would just be crazy if I don't take this can of color home. So that's the color that I decided to go with. It's a beautiful teal color. Unfortunately, there's no paint code for it, so only way I'm gonna get a little bit extra if I want to use it as a base to lay down over the primer and then come back with the matching can is I gotta mix it myself. So luckily I've been able to mix a little bit of extra myself, but of course, you know, I'm not mixing the two together. I've already painted the body, so I need that perfect match to come out of the rest of that original gallon can. Remember, with color matching on cars, you pretty much never get a 100% dead match. You're always going to have to do a panel blend or some serious work to get a color to match. If it's not coming out of the same can and the two panels are touching each other, you better have some tricks up your sleeve, because color matching is just an art on auto body. So anyway, just I'll ramble on about that, but something to keep in mind, I ended up going with this really cool teal color, and I'm super happy with the way it came out. It's very unique, and it just looks gorgeous under the sun and under different lights. So pretty happy about it. Man, I'll tell you guys, sometimes your intuitions, you know, feelings, whatever, you'll get the craziest feelings about something, and sometimes it's good to listen to it. I ended up, you know, I've never been like superstitious, or I don't know, just into a lot of crazy stuff, but I've had this feeling for the last few weeks, or maybe it was just the thought in my mind. I was trying to consider anything that could go wrong, and I said, what if I get the car ready and then my air compressor breaks, like the day I'm painting the car, or right in the middle of the paint job? Now, all in all, this ended up being an electrical issue where I had a wire in one of the areas that I had run, and it was pinched between the metal box. So luckily it was like grounded, but I didn't even check that. I just drew the conclusion that something was wrong with my compressor when this issue happened, and I looked at the capacitors, and one of them was like oozing out this whatever's inside the capacitors, this plastic material. And funny enough, even to now recording this particular video clip, it's been like a month and my compressor is still running fine. The issue ended up being electrical, but all this happened on this day. I was getting it wiped down. I had my friend Erin, she was helping me get ready to spray. She wanted to see some color get laid down. She's kind of been, you know, with me, like following the build the whole time. She typically asks the questions. It's a good friend of mine, and you know, she has heard me every complaint or every problem or success I've had with building this car. She pretty much knows about it. So so it's kind of cool. I got her over. She's helped me wipe it down, and you know, unfortunately for both of us, we didn't get to see color that day, but it worked out great because I realized I really needed the whole day to spray in the booth, and that's why I ended up figuring out the issue and painting the car the next day. But I'm gonna let these video clips run through so you can kind of see the way everything happened, and then kind of my disappointment when I realized that I wasn't gonna paint. So here we go. Alright, well, unfortunately, painting isn't happening today. Now, I say unfortunately, but I'm also very fortunate in some way, and here's what it is. My air compressor crapped out. I had a capacitor that it started leaking stuff out of the back, and I'm pretty sure that's why now, so it won't start the motor. But the backstory to this is kind of crazy, because for the last couple weeks, I've been sanding like crazy. I primed the car, you know, the final primer time. I installed the air ride. I've done so much to get this thing ready, hoping to paint it as soon as possible, because here we are in the middle of summer. I'm ready to see some paint on this thing. So I had this kind of premonition in a way where I was like, I guess I was trying to cover all the bases in my head, and I'm thinking, okay, well, what could go wrong? You know, I'm ready to paint. You know, it's going to be a big day, it's going to be a big deal, lots of expensive color and clear coat. And the air compressor crossed my mind because I've had it for probably the full 14 years I've lived in this house and never had any problems. It's a 60-gallon Campbell Hosfeld, wonderful compressor, and I think my mind was just covering all the things like, well, what if the air compressor went out? And I had this horrible thing that popped in my head. It was like, whoa, what if you're like halfway through spraying base coat? You've only got a 16-hour window, less than that because in Texas it's so hot here that, you know, maybe 10 hours. You want to make sure you get clear coat on that base as quick as you can because it's going to dry and then, you know, it won't hold the same. So I was thinking to myself, you know, the worst case would be the compressor decides to die halfway through spraying base coat, and, you know, I have to run out and buy a whole nother compressor. So I had these thoughts in my head already. Now, what's crazy to me is that it actually happened today, and I even had a friend here that was helping me. You guys will see in some of the time lapse, my friend Erin, she was helping me get the car all wiped down. She was asking like, hey, I'd love to see you spray some paint on the car. So we planned for her to be able to come over and watch. But it's just no joke. I mean,
I had the air running all morning while I was taping up the car. I'd scuff a little if I find a spot, you know, I'd blow the car off. We got it all cleaned off and everything. And it was literally when I mixed the color, the first black color to do the trim work, that I came out to spray and noticed that the pressure was super weak. And then I realized, I looked at the gauge, I had maybe 40 PSI and couldn't get the compressor to come on. So the summary to all this is, I'm a little let down that I didn't get to see paint and clear go on the car today, but I'm also extremely happy that I didn't have to A, go out and buy another compressor, or B, have some base coat on it that I had to let cure that just had to end up being re-sanded, because I didn't want to have to untape the car, you know, sand it or anything like that. The good thing is the car is still ready to go. It's still pretty clean. The booth has been nicely revamped. I've got these beautiful LED lights now. It's been completely painted on the walls. So overall, it's a good day. It's taped up, it's ready to go. I didn't end up ruining the paint job because of an air compressor that was about to die. But the fact that I called it is still pretty crazy. And I'm gonna get these capacitors ordered so that we can get this compressor back up and running.
Alright, so after the previous day being pretty eventful, I got the issue figured out, and I said, you know what, my air compressors lasted this long and it was just an electrical issue. I'm gonna spray the car. Like, I know I need to figure out these capacitors that look like they're gonna let this thing down before too long, but at least it's still running. And I was like, it's been 14 years. I've got an electrical issue that I fixed. The compressor's gonna make it through this spray job. Let's do it. Now, being that it's, you know, summer in Texas, it's been a pretty hot summer. It hasn't been as hot because we've gotten more rain than normal. But keeping that in mind, I'm going to be going through some black base coat for the trim areas. I'm kind of doing the two-tone on the car, and then Vaydor has certain areas where it tends to go black, like in the rear by the tail lights and all that. So I'm going to do all this in one shot. We're going to do the black base coat. We're going to cover those areas up. I'm going to shoot the main base coat teal color, and then get the clear coat done when it's all, you know, all the tapes peeled off from the maskings. So it's gonna be a long day of spraying, which I knew that, but I also knew I didn't want to run overtime where I had to go into work that night. I actually had a show that night. So I was like, I want to get it all done, because you've always got kind of a 16 to 24 hour window to do clear coat, you know, and that's, you know, once you spray the base coat. But being that it's hotter, that window is going to go down. So if this standox color is like a 16-hour window, you could look at more like 8 or 10 hours you want to be clear coating this stuff. So I didn't take that long. I would say from the time I sprayed the teal base coat to the time I got clear coat on might have been, you know, 2 or 3 hours. But you know, all together. But it went good. It was a good day, and I had to be a little aware of the temperatures and just trying to make sure I was moving things along and working as efficiently as possible. But I was definitely glad to get it done, and it was nice to go to my show and just think about like colors or clear coats curing in the paint booth, and it was just it was a good day overall. It's nice to see this part come together for sure. So like I knew it would be, that was a really long day. It was hot. You know, I was doing everything I could to manage the temperature, but also keep it warm to where when I sprayed the clear coat that it would cure, you know. And I was using the Elegance Clear. It's a Sherwin-Williams Ultra, and it's probably one of the most expensive clears that I use. I want to say the gallon is probably $350 to $400. Well, that main component anyway, but you need 2 cans of the UH80 hardener because this is a 2-to-1 clear, which means you're getting more hardener by design in this clear coat. It's called the Elegance Clear, I guess, for a reason. It seems to really gloss out nice, and it also seems to have a little bit more of a solid kind of finish. Now that I've been able to mess with it, it doesn't seem like it scratches as easily if you kind of rub some dust on it. You know, certain clears seem like they'll get those hair scratches real easily. It seems to be pretty solid. I had never used it before, but I heard good things, and it's like they say a 2-to-1 clear is going to be the best way to go when you're doing like a really nice high-end car, maybe a nice classic car. A 4-to-1 clear is still good if you're using high-quality stuff. 3-to-1 is still pretty good, but they say when it's, you know, 2-to-1, that's where you're really getting that nice gloss and a good durable finish. So I was pretty happy with this stuff, and it does dry a little bit slower given that it needs to gloss out and it's an overall type of clear. So, you know, it's meant to spray something large like a whole car, and then you have that time for it to flow out before it really starts to kick off and cure. So I can't really complain. It's got, you know, some dust in it, which is totally normal. My booth isn't perfect, and I hadn't sprayed a big job in this booth in a while, so we're not even going to worry about buffing it yet. I'm going to wait till the car's all put together, and I'm going to color sand and buff the areas that you can see. So can't really complain. Glad to see it. I'm really happy with it so far, so no complaints here.
Oh my god, this color in the sun. Unbelievable. Jesus. I couldn't have asked for anything better. That is amazing. Well, I would say color selection was a success. Man. Alright. Of course the clouds come as soon as I get to see it for a second. Oh, there we go. Nice. This is so cool. Let's get it put back together.
Okay, like so many other things on this car, this window was a pain. Not only did I have to cut it out without cracking it, which went well once I figured that out, spraying water while I'm running the jigsaw at a really slow speed. You had to use the heat gun to form a bit of a curve into it so that it would follow the body better. And then getting the holes lined up to drill properly, and then, you know, of course installing some rivet nuts behind the fiberglass, or through the fiberglass. It was just it was a process, and I mean, you would think, oh, let's cut out a window and put it in. No, by the time you're done, there's 20 steps to this. I mean, you're gonna clean it all up, you're gonna tin it, and then put the weather stripping around it, and then final fit. You know, just it was something else. But I love the way it came out. It's pretty cool, and I'm glad that I got to use the 1/4-inch plexiglass. So you'll see how this works out. Now, I started by using some really thick masking paper and cutting out a template. All I had to do was hold it against the outside or the inside even of the body. If you can trace out the window cutout that you made, you just know you need to add to the outside of your pattern, you know, 5/8 or 3/4 of an inch, however much, you know, that you need the glass to overhang on the fiberglass to give you enough room for the bolts to go through. And I want to say I used some pretty small, like number 10-28 or whatever they were, some little Allen bolts, and they're pretty cool. I got them in black at the local Lowe's store. But if you see off to the side while I'm cutting out this piece, you can see my little template on the side of the table. And it's just a piece of brown paper that I cut out, and once I got the size I needed, I laminated it with some clear tape just so it would hold up, and then I could save it if I ever had to do this again. Hopefully not, but you just never know.
Alright, so even though I was told I should use 1/8 inch, I had this old piece of quarter sitting around, this thick plexiglass, and you know, I figured if I can get it to work with the quarter, I'll do it. I'm gonna have to do a resurface. I'm gonna have to resurface it and polish it to get it to be really clear, because it's got some overspray on it. You can sand some scratches out of it and whatnot. But what I did was, this is, I believe, a 12 tooth per inch blade. And it's one of these real fancy, like, DeWalt with like the double rows of teeth and whatnot. Anyway, I have the saw on the 4-speed, which it wasn't very fast. It's like, yeah, it's hard to tell from the camera, but it wasn't very fast. So basically, you gotta work your way around really slow, not pushing into it super hard, but just enough to get it to cut. And then I was spraying it with water, literally like pulsing it every half second or something, or every third of a second. You know, because if you don't keep water on the blade, it's gonna, it gets really hot and then it melts and then it gets stuck in the plastic. So, you know, you just gotta have some patience. Now I'm gonna have to go back and sand this really nice. It's gonna take a lot of sanding to get this right. I'm even gonna round this edge off to where, you know, it seems like a nice finished piece of glass whenever it's done. But I'm hoping I can get this to work, because I'd love to have 1/4 inch plexi for my rear window instead of 1/8. But we'll see. Either way, they'll both work. But that way, I mean, I can just use what I've got. It's kind of cool. I have this big piece sitting around, so why not try to use it?
All right, here's where I'm at with this. Now, right now, I've already run down the whole thing with 180 grit on the DA and then 320. Now, this piece had some pretty bad scratches in it. If your piece is pretty nice and clear, even after you cut it, you know, maybe you used tape and you shielded it real good to keep it from getting damaged, you don't have to do that. I mean, maybe if you're just kind of do a light resurface, you know, 600, maybe 1000, and go through the 2000, 3000 grits. But I had to go down to 180 and really cut that top layer off. So the 180, the 320, it seems like it's pretty consistent now. I think most of the bad scratches are out of it, and we're just looking at what the DA, like the DA swirl scratches. So I'm probably gonna hit it next with some maybe 600 on the DA, and then I think I have up to about 1200, and I might have to use that wet. But I'm gonna keep going with this thing and see if I can get it polished back out and put on. But I've already got it to fit on the car really nice. Once it's polished, all I'm gonna do is apply like the weather stripping around the side and hope everything goes well with it, and you know, with the thickness and all that. So this is coming out good. Basically, the best thing to do, it's a crazy shape. You can see it's like the whole back window. It even has a curve to it, so you have to cut it out and then you get the curve on it. You can kind of see I did it. It's difficult with a heat gun, but I cut it out of some 1/4 inch plexiglass, and it was just a piece that I had sitting around, and I figured, well, if I can make this work, it's probably too thick normally, but I said if I could make this work instead of using 1/8 inch, that would be cool. So I got it fitted and everything, and the reason why it's hazy is because I've had to sand the whole thing to get all the bad scratches out of it. So you sand it out, you know, go through the whole polishing process. You go through finer grits of sandpaper until you finally get to a point where you can buff it out with a polisher. But I'm pretty happy with this. It's, if I had to do this for somebody else, I would charge them like at least $500, maybe even 1,000. So there we go. Hopefully it works. This is just the first step polish, but it's already clear enough to look through. So yeah, I'm really happy with that. This came out good. It's my window for the rear of the car, and man, it takes a lot of sanding to get those scratches out. And then if you do, like, you know, sometimes the 180 grit sandpaper is pretty coarse, but you need that to get bad scratches out of it. So it took me a while to get the 180 grit scratches out with like the 320, and then you go to the 600, and the higher you go, it just gets finer. And I'm literally down to just, I went all the way up to 2000 grit. So this is looks like a pretty legit window, and I made it myself. So I'll just do that final glazing polish coat, and that'll make it a little bit more, you know, clear, I guess.
won't be as hazy. It's got a little bit of a haze on it, so that'll pretty much finish it off. Pretty cool.
All right, here I am. I'm trying to finish up the fitment of this rear window piece. Now, you can kind of cut this how you want. I probably could have gotten a little bit better with this to, you know, follow the curve and whatnot, but really none of this is going to be seen. You're going to have this roof wing that covers it. You know, it comes back quite a bit, so a lot of this isn't even really going to be seen. I still want it to look good, and of course, you know, you don't want this to go higher than that roof edge, but it's a little lower, so that's good. Now, getting this thing bent properly, of course, is tricky. Now, I may have explained it a little bit already, but I started with a big piece of that barrier paper, like what you'd use for masking when you're painting the walls of the house. It's that big 36-inch, you know, thick paper. I put it on the inside, and I traced the cutout first. And then when I took it out, I added about 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch all the way around on that pattern. So when I cut out the pattern, I cut it out with that extra added to it, okay? And then, you know, put some clear tape over to kind of laminate it and make it, you know, easy to work with. So once you get this piece cut out, the most difficult part probably is going to be forming it, because you need to form, you know, some bends in it about right here, and you can kind of see that it curves with the car. Now, this isn't perfect. It's hard to get it perfect. Also, you know, I was told to try 1/8 plexiglass, but I had a piece of 1/4 inch and I wanted to see if I could make it work. So far, it's doing good, but it is tricky to get it hot enough to do the forming so you can get the curve. And it's mainly going to be from this corner about down to here, or maybe you're going to kind of work the heat this way so you can form it this way. Also, same thing on this side. But I just got all 10 screws to fit. Now I'm using these nice like Allen wrench. These are 1024 screws, and I also have nylon washers on them. That way, you know, any marring that the screw is gonna do to the plexiglass, it'll do it to the nylon instead. So I put those little nylon washers on. Also, I've got some weather seal that's gonna go on the glass after I polish it. And you can see I got a big scratch on here. This is, like I said, an old piece of plexiglass that I had. And that's fine, because I'm going to resurface the whole thing. I'm going to sand the inside and the outside with whatever grit that it takes to remove all those scratches. And then I'm going to go through the stages of the grits and get it to where I can polish that piece to being like brand new. And then, you know, rounding off these edges is something that's really nice to me. So I think I'm going to round the edge a little bit more. I might even make it where the whole thing is like one radius all the way over, so all the way around. But this is going good so far. As long as it works good, like it is, you know, this way, it's sitting good. I like it. As long as the weather seal is sealing up the gaps, and I think it will. This one's going to be a little tricky over here because it's a little wider. But even at the widest point, I think the weather seal that I got is still going to compress enough to make it seal up. So hopefully that'll be good. I don't really plan to have the car in a lot of rain anyway, but yeah, so moving along, I think this window project is kind of coming towards the end, and that's good to know.
Once I felt like I got the holes drilled pretty good and this thing, you know, was 100% complete as far as the plastic work, I decided, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and tint this thing, because I do want it to be a little bit darker. I didn't go with 5%. I want to see through the window pretty good, but I also felt like I can handle putting maybe the 35% on it, and that way that's done before the weather seal gets stuck to it. And it came out great. I'm glad that I tinted it a little. At first I thought I would keep it completely clear, but I'm glad that I did put a little bit of tint. So that's pretty much gonna finish this one up. We'll get the tint on, get it final installed, and call it good.
Alright, so I've got some tint and the weather seal put on it now, so see if this thing will install easily. Pretty legit. Okay, this looks sweet. Boom. It's pretty cool. I love how clean the edge of this came out, and it just, with the seal in there and everything, it looks so good. It's cool.
With the build like this, there's so many different things that you could put off for another day, and that is, I think, through the whole process you're just gonna have to revisit things. And you know, we're gonna really finish tying up these air ride wires, making them nice and complete. So came out good.
Now there's not a whole lot of light right now back here, so you can see basically what I've got is a distribution block for the power, then I've got a fuse block to run, you know, some separate circuits. That way I can power the actuator with a 20 amp fuse. I think I've got the 10 amp fuse on the air ride switches and stuff like that. So pretty cool. Happy with everything, and it works good.
So up here in the front, I've got the air ride control wires coming from this side. They ran all the way through there, real nice with the other wires. And then you can see I've got, you know, a bundle going back that way. Same thing on the other side, there's a bundle. But anyway, that's the control wires really for the most part that come through here. And then it also joins up, this is factory stuff I need to kind of get rid of or decide what to do with. But basically the gauge sending wires come from this side, and that's also run real nice with the factory stuff. I'm just sitting on a pillow. And when they team up together, I've got both wire bundles that are going to be mounted for the, so it looks like this. Just basically both wire bundles there. Let's see. And 2 switches for the air ride. The gauge is over here. And it's really cool. I love this thing. So it's a 3, I don't know, a 3 reading. Triple reading gauge. I'm not good with my words tonight. Turn the ignition on. See it power up. It's pretty awesome. So I got front on top, rear's in the middle, and then the tank pressure's on bottom. So I also have a, you know, mechanical gauge back there as well. I don't know if you can see it from here, but that way if I'm looking back there I can read it. But yeah, that's pretty cool. Now as far as the compressor goes, when it's on, the light is always on. Like that just means it's activated. So I know if I leave my compressor switch on whenever I get out of the car, even if I turn off the ignition, I still want my switch to show red, because I don't want the compressor to come on while I'm away from the car. You know, if all of a sudden the tank pressure drops down low enough, it's got a pressure switch on it. So if it drops low enough and the compressor were to kick on, which happens sometimes, I mean, if you've had air ride long enough on other vehicles, you know that there are times where you really want that to be completely cut. Now some people just use the ignition, and that's fine, but there are cases, the reason I do this is there are cases where I do want to let the compressor run if the car is off. Like if I'm around it and I'm okay with it doing it once, then that's cool. But I like having control over the compressor, and instead of hooking it up to an ignition wire, I just put it on a switch and then I can see if it's left on. So no biggie there. Alright, well, the air ride is at this point pretty much finished, at least until I start mounting these things where they go in the console. I need to cover this gauge back up so it doesn't get scratched or damaged. Man, that has got to be the most beautiful wire I have ever run in a car. Now, that's basically just carrying a few of the wires for the air ride. It's got one of the ones that runs over to this side to operate the valves. And then coming from that side, I've got all my gauge leads tied together. So the one that monitors the pressure on the front gauge runs with that as well, and comes over here and hooks up to that little sending unit right there. So I'll tell you, man, get all the right stuff. This is so cool. These little push clips are awesome. I ordered them on Amazon, and I just had to drill up the hole like one size. So I mean, man, that just looks amazing. It looks like it's meant to be there. Love that.
Now for the few weeks following the paint job on the body, I've had some time to mess with the roof wing a little bit. The roof wing is pretty much prepped and ready to do the final wet sand, and I'm going to spray that and get it put on soon. But I've had some time to finish up some things like cleaning up the rest of the air ride wires that I was working on. You know, getting the center caps in my wheels. The Amani forged wheels use a rubber O-ring that holds in the center cap, and I had to track down the proper O-rings because mine actually came with 3 of those missing. So, you know, it's just one thing after another. I've been kind of slowly putting things in the car that can go, like I've laid the carpet in it and got it to start, you know, forming. And, you know, getting those O-rings. Funny enough, I found the O-rings that were the proper size at a pull and spa supply store, and it's the only place in town that had those O-rings. Luckily I had one to match up to it, and even when I put it on the center caps, I still had to sand them down a bit to get the rubber to go, you know, between the wheel, the machined area, and actually fit. But we got those in, so I've been able to take some pictures and just kind of, you know, go around it and try to tie up some loose ends with the body as I'm getting ready to start doing parts and even piece the interior into this thing. So that's really what's to come next. And as far as this video, I feel like it's long enough. It's, you know, a lot of good progress has been made. So I'm going to let you guys rest at this point. And again, thanks to all the support. I'm super close. We've almost got 1,000 subscribers, and that's pretty exciting. So can only thank all you guys that have kept tuning in and followed the series, and even anyone that's watching the piano restorations and all the other DIY videos that I've put on here. Just super cool to see the channel grow, and we'll just keep going with it. So I always appreciate the support. Cheers everybody out there. See you pretty soon on the next one.
Those of you that are thinking about moving to Texas from some other state, here's a mosquito for you. Think twice.